We are back in the nerd zone with Maren Costa, who was on the pod, I think a year or two ago, talking about her experience with Amazon and fighting for climate justice. And now she is running for Seattle City Council and has made it into the general election phase. So congrats, Maren, and welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us about the primary. How did it go? Like it seemed like there were a lot of people running, and you made it out into the general. So congrats. What was that like?
It's been incredibly fun for starters. I have never kind of learned so much so fast. I mean, there's a phrase at Amazon and, I'm sure Google, when you start there drinking from the fire hose, or you just feel like everything's coming at you so fast and you're trying to take as much of it in as you can. I'm definitely drinking from the fire hose. But I kind of love that. I love learning. I look back at where I was and where I am, where I was 6 months ago and where I am today. And that's just been a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There were 8 people in the race. We have 4 open seats in Seattle for city council this year. So several incumbents stepping back. There's a total of 9 seats, 7 districts. So 7, where you're aligned to a district, and then 2 at large, total of 9. Out of those 9, there's 4 at least open seats. And so there's just a glut of people throwing their hat in the ring, which is what happens when you don't have to run against an incumbent. So there was 8 in my race, and now there's 2.
Wow, that's great. I mean, that is also a little bit of a commentary on the power of incumbency, that unless these incumbents are stepping aside, a lot of people don't want to throw their hat in the ring because they feel like there's just too much of a headwind. Yeah. Has it been a full-time effort for you, or do you do this like on the weekends, or how does that work?
It's full-time for me. I knew that I would want to do this full-time. I don't know how people can do it, which is a real statement in a way of, I've had so many thoughts and realizations about this. It's such a full-time job, and it's such a physical job. And we kind of say that we want to see more people step up for this, and we want to see more diversity. But what do we actually do to support that diversity? Like, there's a woman in one of the districts who's running, and she's disabled, and I can't imagine how she's knocking on doors. Like, I feel like I'm getting my steps in. Like, that's how you have to win a democratic race. Is like voter contact and knock on doors. And then people that have a job or 2 jobs or 3 jobs. How could they possibly run a campaign? And I think that's kind of a fascinating thing we should think about as a society, if we actually want that diversity that we say we want.
Yeah. It's similar to the argument that you hear where people say like, oh, we don't need a federal holiday for voting. People should just, if they care, they'll take time away from work and drive over. It's like, well, you're assuming that they can do that they can drive over, that they don't have like other commitments, and
that they even have a car.
Yeah.
That they have a job that they can take time off for. Yeah, it's yep.
Totally. And running for office, I would imagine like there's probably a lot of voices that are not out there, partly because to run you have to have a lot of time and resources and energy and flexibility.
That's absolutely right. I don't think I could do a job and run at the same time, and I just am lucky enough or privileged enough to have the resources to take the time off to just campaign full-time.
What was it that motivated you to throw your hat in the ring and go for it? Because you've been in the private sector for some time. It's not common for folks with that background to say, yes, I'm going to run for city council.
Well, for starters, I was asked by a couple people, and I've heard, since, women have to be asked multiple times, So it's been something that's been brewing for a few years, but so much on the periphery. Not like I've actually been moving towards that consciously. like setting myself up on some committees or,
Mm-hmm.
getting involved in community in some way to start building that kind of a resume. But it had crossed my mind, particularly when I was leaving Amazon, when I was fired from Amazon for, trying to bring tech workers and warehouse workers together at the beginning of the pandemic, when warehouse workers were being put in really unsafe conditions. And Amazon didn't want tech workers talking to warehouse workers, so I was fired very abruptly. But so that was the first time I kind of thought about, all the elected officials came out to support me during that time, which was amazing. So both, labor unions who helped us file a ULP, an unfair labor practice, and National Labor Relations Board that took, Amazon to court for me, and we won. And then 9 U.S. senators who wrote an open letter to Jeff Bezos saying you shouldn't have fired, Maren Costa, and there's a few other people fired at the same time. So it's that sort of thing that kind of made me think, wow, we need people, we need collective action. So we need everybody coming together, building power, whether it's like worker power or in the form of a union, or what I was doing, just organizing people to, stand up and demand a climate pledge, for example, from Amazon. And then the flip side of that is oftentimes you need people to take that will of the people and convert it into policy. And so it's kind of like two sides of the same coin for me. And it made a lot of sense. I also think just my skill set applies well. So I took some time to really think about, I just want to have impact to make change for the better. Mm-hmm. And I took some time to really think about where I could take what I bring to the table and find the largest lever to push, and where's that combination? And this seemed like the best path. I love how sometimes I love starting where you are. When you want to make change, start where you are. And I love also the idea that sometimes successful municipal policy even bubbles up to successful federal policy. So there's a lot of impact there.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm hopeful.
A lot of people that watch this podcast are from all across the country and they're not from Seattle. How are things in Seattle now? If you listen to sort of the maybe more conservative news media, they'll describe it as like, complete utter chaos and lawlessness and
yes, hellscape.
What's it like over there?
I think it's beautiful. We definitely have big problems we need to solve, but it's not the way that it seems. I actually had a friend in Brazil send me that sort of Insta account that's like Seattle sucks or Seattle is shit or something they have, and it just kind of goes around and looks at the absolute underbelly, which you can make any place look terrible. But she hasn't been here for many years, and she was like, oh my God, is this true? I was like, no, it's not that way, don't worry. But it's just crazy how that I was back in Minnesota where I'm from, and everyone had that same thing, like, oh, how do you live in Seattle? Isn't it just so scary? And it's like, no. However, we have some really big problems we need to address, and they're not easy to solve. And I think we can do a better job than we're doing, but I'm not naive enough to think that there's some silver bullet.
Yeah. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing Seattle and, that you'd want to focus on?
Yeah. So public safety is on everyone's minds. Whether you're listening to Fox News or not, but especially if you're listening to Fox News. But there's definitely, after 2020, we had several officers age out. We didn't actually defund. There was the vote to defund, but nothing never actually happened. Very little happened. But there were some, officers that were, I think, demoralized by feeling like they weren't supported by their community. So if they're close to aging out, they're just going to say like, hey, I might as well just quit now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's been hard to rehire. So we lost, say, 400 officers over the process of aging out and a few people leaving and then just not being able to rehire because it seems like a downturn in people who were even signing up to that job. Although in 2016, apparently, 85% of precincts were saying across the nation were saying they were at an officer shortage. But so it's been hard to rehire.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's having that problem. Armed services are having that problem. I think the young people just want to be YouTube influencers. I say that laughing because now it's like, wow, don't I sound like that old person? I'm kidding. I'm really kidding. But because it's a tough job, it's like we have so many guns on our streets.
Yeah.
You can't not have a heavily armed and very, dangerous role that we need to fill. We just have to have a heavily armed arm of our force.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone wants to sign up to do that job. And then it doesn't help when we have, you might have seen the national story in Seattle. It went around the world, actually went international, because there was an officer responding to a drug overdose call, but was speeding at like 75 miles an hour on a, pedestrian or like a small street, didn't really have their lights on, and then killed a woman.
Oh no.
Walking through a crosswalk. And then the president of the Seattle Police Union and the vice president of the Seattle Police Union had a hot mic moment where the vice president was on record. Only his end of the conversation was recorded, but you can kind of imagine what. But it's like you got the top two guys, and they're saying things that I don't know if you heard this, but just like, she wasn't worth much anyways. She was only 26, so just write a check. Probably $11,000. It's just caused massive uproar, and it's like we're trying to rebuild the force, and then you guys are not helping us. Now I have people saying, my brother wanted to be an officer and my whole family told him that they wouldn't respect him, and it's just going to be hard. So, and then, like people maybe don't want to come. I mean, leadership sets the tone for an organization. You have your top two people. So it's like, what will make young people want to sign up for this job? You have to really dig into that, because I think as a nation, we're going to need to figure that out, because we need armed officers. We're not, unfortunately, Japan or Norway, where you can walk around with a billy club and do your job,
Yeah.
So public safety is a big one. And then obviously homelessness and affordable housing in Seattle, those are big ones. And then I'm, of course, passionate about climate justice and workers' rights.
Yeah, those are all huge ones.
Mm-hmm.
On the public safety side, I'm curious to get your thoughts. Like, I remember when there was all the talk about defunding the police, and I understood the emotion and the motives behind it, being like, hey, the police department isn't doing its end of the bargain. Or I always thought, like, wow, I would have done the opposite. I would have increased the officer salary and training and hold them to higher standards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But make it so, like, this is a great job.
Yep.
And you're doing important work, and we have very high expectations, but you get compensated fairly for it.
I totally agree. That's what I'm saying kind of on the campaign trail. Like, we need to make Seattle the best city in which to be an officer. And we need to, so that we can attract the cream of the crop. We don't want to just get bodies in. That's really dangerous. Like the 5 officers that were involved in the Tyree Nichols murder were brought in at a time when the Memphis, department had lowered their bar just to get bodies in. So that can backfire. We don't want to do that. But we want to make sure that we have an extremely high bar. You want to have a high bar for anyone you're hiring, but you particularly want to have a high bar for someone that you're going to hand a gun to.
Yeah.
It's just a there's a lot on the line there.
There's a lot online. I mean, it's a stress. I'm guessing it must be a stressful job.
Hmm.
A bit thankless. Like you
Hmm.
probably you only get talked about if something bad goes down.
That's right. I have a
Like,
friend on the
yeah.
force who, her first beat was on the Aurora Bridge here in Seattle, which is a really high bridge, and she was doing that before they had put up the big,
Oh yeah.
fences to prevent people
Yeah.
from jumping, and so she was constantly responding to suicide, which is hard in and of itself. But then she went
Mhm.
to the academy, and she would tell her recruits, "You have 10 times more likelihood of dying of suicide yourself than of a violent offender."
Mm.
So it is just a tough job.
Yeah.
And we have to definitely take care of the officers that we have, take care of their mental health, make sure that they feel supported. Yeah, and we want the best. There are definitely people who are really there. We know that, for the right reasons and really trying to do a good job. And it is a really tough job.
Now I haven't been in back in Seattle for many years now, actually. But I understand that there is a housing, uh, you know, challenge or crisis, however you want to describe it,
Mhm.
around unhoused people. And I'm curious, like, what's your take on that? How do you be helpful in that situation?
Well, I am a housing first advocate
Mhm.
because it's the solution that kind of has the most evidence behind it as far as working. Houston has implemented it and cut their homelessness in half, from what I hear. Um, and so the idea there is the first step, not the only step, but the first step is to get people to come inside and have in some place where they have four walls and a door they can lock. So we've been, especially pre-COVID, we had congregate shelters that are no longer, people just don't want to go to them,
Mm.
and even, you can understand you can't bring your dog, you can't bring your spouse, you can't bring your drugs, you might get your stuff stolen, you'll probably get bed bugs, you'll probably be harassed, and you probably won't be able to sleep here tomorrow night. So it's just, you can
Mm.
understand why that wouldn't be something that would bring people in off the streets. But we do want people to come inside. Then we can have, our streets and our parks are our streets and our parks again. We don't have to worry about our kids tripping over needles in the park. But it's also the first step in getting somebody on the right path. So then you bring the right, the wraparound services to people once they're inside. It's much easier to get wraparound services to people in a tiny home village than it is in a ravine, which
Mhm.
is just that the firefighters are often called. Somebody tripped on a route in an encampment in a ravine in the middle of the night, and they have to go in, and there's gunshots, and they don't feel safe, and they can't watch their back. And, it's just, but they say we never get phone calls to the tiny home villages. So we need to give people a place to go. When it's like, we know when rents go up, homelessness goes up. That's just a fact. Like, there's high drug use in Appalachia, low homelessness because it's just so cheap to put a roof over your head.
Mm.
So we're gonna see people, increasingly, dropping into homelessness. And we need to just start really getting behind and funding the housing first. We spent, I don't know, I hear estimates and it's hard to estimate, but $37 million on sweeps last year. I don't know if you know if that's a word that is used everywhere. Sweeps is where you just kind of move a homeless encampment along. You just come in, uproot people, break it up, and move people along. And what essentially ends up happening is, I mean, it's disruptive, obviously, which has good and bad. Sometimes when things get really entrenched and organized, then the predators have more access and they figure things out and whatever. So you just sometimes breaking it up, maybe, but people lose their stuff and they don't,
Mm.
it's hard. And then they don't get offered a place to go. So they end up 3 blocks over.
Right.
It's just, it's inefficient, it's
Mhm.
expensive, and it doesn't work. And it's kind of inhumane. And so
Mhm.
if we took all that money that we were spending on sweeps and put it into a housing first solution, I think we would be seeing better results.
Now you talked about was it West Virginia where they have substance use challenges, but not as much homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it reminds me of a topic that I was curious to hear your thoughts on, which is I imagine there's a lot of homelessness that is influenced by substance use or mental health challenges.
Mm-hmm.
What's your what's your take on that? Because I guess it sounds like you're saying, hey, start by getting a roof over people's heads,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can provide other kind of support and help for people to manage these other challenges that they
Mm-hmm.
may have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, we should also note that one of the best things we can do is keep people from falling into homelessness in the first place. So if we had a good monitoring system for people who are, house poor, like they're paying,
Mm,
we already know they're paying a much larger percentage of their income for rent than they should be. They're at 60% of their income, 70 or whatever. They're going to be really likely to fall. So that's kind of first step, and then also next is the housing first thing. But yes, there was recently a study done that I'm not going to be able to quote it directly, and I think it was in California, and they kind of had done one of the more deep dive studies onto the the causes why someone ends up homeless in the first place. And it is definitely, there's a Venn diagram here of mental illness and substance use disorder and one paycheck short of making rent.
mhm,
But they found that the number one reason is one paycheck short of making rent. So sometimes, it may be more than we think. Correlation, not causation, or
mhm.
that, ending up on the streets. And I talked to one young woman who's homeless. She ended up on the streets because her roommate couldn't make rent. They
Mm,
were sharing rent. Her roommate couldn't pay, so then she couldn't afford the whole thing. So she's out on the streets. Then she said, I started doing meth because I had to watch my stuff. I had to watch my back. I'm trying to stay up all night, to stay safe.
mm,
Then I'm not sleeping. Then I'm kind of going cuckoo.
mhm.
It's just, you know, obviously we've lost a ton of mental health beds, and that's just a huge problem. We do not have enough mental health beds, and then we also don't have enough treatment programs. So people that actually come to this point of like, hey, I want to get treatment, I want to get off the streets, I'm ready. Then it's like, okay, we can get you in 3 weeks.
Mhm.
It's like if it's going to be easier to get fentanyl than it is to get treatment,
Yeah,
we're not going to win.
yeah, yeah. We have a question from the chat from one of our channel members, Vaughn, who's asking, "Hey, whatever happened with the $15 an hour? Was there like a minimum wage discussion, or what is the state of like how much kind of living wage people can get in Seattle?"
Yeah, 15 passed, and then
Hmm.
we've gone up from there. So I don't know exactly what it is right now, but we did do that. That was definitely a step in the right direction. But $15 an hour also, Seattle's just getting so expensive to live, and it's interesting that it's almost starting to work against even the tech companies that have kind of been part of the reason for the
Hmm.
housing pricing inflation, because now we kind of see Austin and Denver kind of kicking butt with their tech industries, and
Yeah,
it's because people think, well, like I could actually afford to raise a family there,
yeah,
so I'm not
yeah.
going to be spending so much of my money on housing. So $15 an hour is not even enough. So there's discussion that if we were actually going to make choose a wage that would enable people to reasonably live in Seattle, we'd probably need to be closer to $30 an hour.
Mm,
But we're trying to at least get it up to like 22. It's hard.
yeah. I noticed there was another priority you have on your website that's around a future facing city. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little more about that?
I come out of big tech, and I was always looking forward. I think we kind of share some of that.
Hmm.
Think big, look forward. This stuff excites me. We are definitely heading into an energy transition. So we have these two major forces that are coming at the next generation. This climate the climate crisis and AI. And I actually asked, kind of as a fun little joke, I asked ChatGPT, what are the top 3 existential threats to humanity? And ChatGPT said, climate, AI, nuclear war.
Mm.
It's changed its answer a little bit, but it's in there, and it's just kind of interesting. And I think, we need to both prepare like defensively for these things and try to see as much of the opportunity as we can. So when I think about, if you kind of look at that, you think of what can we do defensively as a city for climate. So one of the first things I would love to do is make sure that we have climate resiliency centers in every neighborhood. I would love to start from a climate justice aspect. I would love to start with the neighborhoods that have been historically underinvested in the first place, which are commonly, the low income, high POC, neighborhoods. We have a pretty racist history in Seattle of redlining and stuff, where certain neighborhoods have just been really left behind. And so some of them don't even have community centers, or they don't have libraries, because I would love to see us start with, the 27 branches of the public library, all schools and all community centers, make sure that they have backup air conditioning, or backup, heat pump air conditioning, backup power, and air filtration. And so that's kind of like a front line of defense. Just like next time we have a massive heat dome, or a bomb cyclone combined with a atmospheric river and a king tide, or whatever it is, people have a place safe to go. But then beyond that, what can we do? And what can we do to build a city? And I think Seattle has the roots for it. We have the tech roots and we have the green roots. And I think we can legitimately lead in this area. And so generate the jobs, attract the industries that will help the next generations, deal with these 2 very significant changes. What are you going to call them? Threats or changes, but they're coming, and we're kind of not ready. And I think there's a lot we could do to be more ready and to actually capitalize on the opportunity. It sounds kind of capitalistic.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, especially given, the work that Governor Inslee did around, he was very, very on the front edge of climate advocacy when it wasn't, as obvious to us as it is today. And then you've got the tech roots in Seattle, and then a love for, I think people in Seattle do appreciate nature and the planet. So who knows? Maybe it can become an exemplar of how to do it.
I mean, I'm endorsed by the machinists union. They're the Boeing engineers. They're really good at building propellers. What are wind turbines?
Yeah, totally.
Could we just own offshore wind, and
Yes.
really push that forward?
By the way, I find it so amazing that I'm gonna venture into presidential politics, but I can't get over how Donald Trump keeps talking about how he's worried about the birds with wind turbines. It's like, when has he ever cared about birds?
I know. That's just, I actually got a sort of a death threat from somebody saying, screaming at me about climate and saying, what are you going to do about all the batteries? And, why don't you take a forever nap? Well, an effing forever nap.
Wow.
I know, right? It's like, what is going on here? Why are we so...
Yeah, that I've heard that talking point as well. I another one is, hey, if you support electrification, you're supporting China because a lot of solar panels are produced in China. And it's like, okay, well, if you take that argument, then we shouldn't be buying anything.
Yeah,
because a lot of stuff gets produced in China.
Right. And so then it's like, well, it's not really like, let's build the industry here,
Yeah.
Let's build that. And there's also ways to do these things without using, the rare earth metals and the, toxic whatever, and the, child labor in whatever country. And, we can do that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't mean we just stop
Yeah, and burn more coal as
Yeah,
it
that's
that
gonna work.
sounds way better. Yeah. Well, you are now in the top 2. I noticed it looks like you've been endorsed by a lot of the people you ran against in the primary. Like how are you kind of seeing, like, for voters out there who are still deciding uh who to go with, like, what's your argument for why you versus your opponent?
The argument is some of the same things that all 6 opponents in the primary have now endorsed my campaign, and they actually wrote a letter. After the primary, I hightailed it off to Minnesota to see my mom for a week because you're running,
Mm,
you're burning the candle at both ends. I came back and they had gotten together and did this on their own. They wrote a letter and they said some great things, and I'm truly honored. But kind of saying, we've seen Maren learn and grow and listen, and she seems reasonable and pragmatic and evidence based, and just we trust that she will be a genuinely good leader for our community. So as long along those lines, and so um, even people that didn't totally agree with everything policy wise or position platform wise still would endorse my campaign. And I think that I do believe that I have been able, even in my past life or all my jobs before, kind of someone that can bring people together, that can hold space for that center civil discourse that I think we really need to get back to. You can have kind of ideological arguments on either side and grandstanding and digging your heels in. And we've seen that in Seattle. We don't need more of that. We need to come together and be able to work together. So that's one thing. And then just in general, some differences are, my opponent would say that we should continue sweeping homeless people, and I would say, it just, like I said, it doesn't work. It's inefficient. It's expensive, and it's inhumane. He would say he's reluctant to commit to raising any progressive revenue. This is a big one because nobody wants to talk about taxes, but Seattle is heading into a $230 million budget deficit in 2025. Coming out of Amazon, where one of the leadership principles was frugality, I am 100% in favor of doing a deep dive and finding, like, everybody bubble up 10 ways from within your department, bubble them up to the mayor. How can we save money in our department? You all down there, there's the one nonprofit we've been, working with that has never met their goals, or there's the meeting that we all go to on Fridays with people making whatever dollars, hundreds of dollars per hour that we're paying, and nothing ever comes out of that meeting, or whatever it is. So we need to be as efficient as we can. At Amazon, we used to say every dollar wasted is a dollar not spent on customers. You could say the same thing, constituents. However, we're going to need to raise progressive revenue. Washington State has what we call an upside down tax code. So we have the worst tax code in the nation. It's kind of hard to get the money that we need to solve big problems back into our cities. And so we have, like, for example, one thing is the jumpstart tax that was passed in Seattle. Was a kind of a progressive way to say, if you are, the big businesses, if you have a payroll of over 8 million and you have X number of employees who are making over $175,000, then you pay X percentage on, and you can have little dials and knobs you can turn, but it basically hits the big businesses and gets a little more money coming back into the city without hitting the average homeowner and the average middle class person and then lower still, who already kind of feel like we're paying a lot. And in fact, with an upside down tax code, we actually do have, like, the lowest income. The people who are making the least amount are actually paying the highest percentage of their salary, and the people who are making the most paying the lowest. So we have, poor people paying more than their fair share, and billionaires paying less than their fair share. So we we need to be open to progressive revenue, and that's something that because we have, that's something my opponent won't commit to, just because he's being backed by kind of the big billionaire donors in Seattle who typically do try to drop in and fund campaigns so that they can have people on the council that will support big business. And I mean, I don't not support big business. I also want to protect working families.
Yeah. Now, I would imagine if you had all of your previous opponents endorsing you, that like all of their support plus yours should be greater than your opponent's support. Are there polls, or like how do you get a sense of where things are right now?
We don't, like, city council races don't have enough budget to do polls. So I kind of have to, I mean, I knock on doors, and I knocked on a door just yesterday where the husband had in the primary voted for me, but the wife had voted for Stephen Brown. And they called him the bagel guy because he owns a chain of bagel stores. And he's awesome. I really enjoyed him on the campaign trail. I think he's really smart, caring, just a great guy. And she is now, after talking to her, she said, now I will support you. So I do think that will happen. And I hear it anecdotally on the doors, but there's no way to actually poll until November 7th. And that's when we'll find out how much is true. It's really hard to know.
So in the primary, if you assume, let's say, 2/3 of the people who endorsed you, 2/3 of the people who voted for the people who endorsed you go to you, are you pretty much good, or is it going to be a nail biter? Like how does the math work?
So I came through the primary with 33%. Rob had 24%.
Okay.
And everyone else had, you can total up what's left there. So what would that be? 33 and 24 is 57
or 40 something. Yeah. 40 something.
50, no, 33 and 27 or 33 and 24 would be 50.
Oh yeah. The balance would be 40.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, what percentage do I have to get of that to, be, it's not
right.
It's doable.
So it should be doable. It
but
should be doable.
Definitely there's we see it in the Seattle Times and on Fox News. There's definitely this kind of fear mongering about public safety. And I think there's just a certain number of people who are going to think that a dude is better for public safety than a woman, even though I do consider myself the public safety candidate in this race. And I was actually endorsed by it's the only public safety endorsement that anyone's gotten, but is the 911 Dispatchers Guild. So the people that handle all of the calls. And they're doing amazing work. They've actually now done a deep dive into the calls, and they're trying to set up a third team that would be an unarmed but trained civilians, trained experts that can handle, whether it's a man down or a wellness check or even a drug overdose, instead of sending an officer with a gun. And they figured out that they could take 50% of the calls that are coming into 911, move them to this care team. And if you think about that, we just doubled our police force overnight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, of course, then we need to confront the fact that we're going to have this faction of our public safety team that is just kind of in fight or flight mode all the time, because another friend on the force was, said at the times when I go into the community to just kind of respond to somebody whose house was broken into last night is like the time I get to just kind of be calm. It's kind of like my break, and be calm and react and be engaged with community in kind of a helpful way. And so we have to be really careful about, creating this SWAT team, basically. But that might be what we need to do. We might need that specialization in order to get armed officers to be available when we really need them. And then it's actually like that care team, that middle team could actually do, I say middle because firefighters, you can kind of firefighters and police officers. And then in between here is this new team that they're talking about setting up. But it might also be better. That team might actually be better at responding
Yeah.
to these calls than people who aren't trained to be, mental behavioral health response specialists, or drug overdose, or social workers, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, we are asking these police officers to wear lots of hats right
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Yeah. And the skills you need to react to armed break-in are very different than an overdose,
Yeah.
or someone with a mental health issue
Yeah,
that's
and lots
having
of
an
them are
episode. Yeah.
really saying that. They're like, I didn't. Not only am I not trained for this, I didn't sign up to be a social worker. It's not the same person a lot of times. Like,
Yeah.
a person who's
Yeah.
interested in, carrying a gun and going into like high adrenaline situations is not necessarily the same person who signs up to be a social worker. And it's just like, you don't often find that in the same person.
Yeah. Yeah. And how's this campaign sort of spending going on? Like, are you keeping up with the, making sure your message is getting out there? Like, we're in the home stretch now. It's crucial, I'm guessing.
I'm not, like, I'm behind right now. There was a moment in the primary where I was ahead, but people always say the big business candidate, like where they have dollars, I have to have feet. Because he's getting the big dumps of money from the big business donors. And it's he's ahead in fundraising, and that's a big problem. There's going to be 4 or 5 mailers that are going to go out to people from his campaign. I mean, it's from his IE. I don't know if in independent expenditures, so it's like the PACs, they dump money in and they get to choose how they spend it, but it's in favor of that candidate. So the candidate can actually say what the message is, but they'll be sending out mailers that say Maren wants to defund the police, or Maren wants to, whatever. It's going to get negative, and it's going to be crappy. And the more money you have to send mailers, I mean, it's a big differentiator in a campaign. So I really have to beat the streets.
Yeah. Well, are you sending out mailers about your public safety
I'll have
plans?
some mailers, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But will I have as many? Will I be able to reach as many voters? It comes down to money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for folks who are listening to this or catching this on replay, and they're interested in helping your campaign out, how can they get involved?
So dollars and feet, you can go to marenforseattle.org. That's my website, and you can sign up to, you can donate from there if you want. Seattle has a program called Democracy Vouchers, where the city of Seattle gives every Seattle voter $100 in vouchers that they can put towards any candidate. So that's another great way to support. And then you'll see, like the big donate button, the big contribute your vouchers, and then you can also sign up to volunteer to knock on doors, or host a party where you bring in your circle of people who might, even just to get the word out, but who might also want to donate vouchers or dollars. So it's feet and dollars. However I can get more feet and more dollars is the best way to support my campaign, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I really hope you win, because if you don't, you wonder, like, what's going on if you got the most votes in the primary and then all of your previous opponents, but the one remaining one, endorsed you. Then the only difference is the remaining one sounds like they have a little bit of a dollar advantage, which, hopefully should not tip the scales that much.
No, we'd hope. I know. It's like,
Yeah.
it'll be an interesting litmus test of democracy.
Yeah. Can you buy your way out of a second place finish?
Yeah.
When all the other people who dropped out endorsed you? Can that? Yeah, I would hope that that's not possible.
I know. Me too. I know.
But a lot of weird things happen sometimes, and it does sound like the public safety thing is heating up. And if that's an issue that people are really focused on,
Yep.
and whoever controls that narrative
Yep.
can sway an election. I mean, we saw that happen with Yang in the New York City election, where he was really strong, and then public safety became a big thing, and then Eric Adams was like, "I'm the ex-cop," and
Yep.
that
It's
that
sort of like, it's the same sort of thing that plays out everywhere. It's sort of like the Republicans have fear and the Democrats have hope. And which one is going to win? Which one is stronger,
Yeah. Well, hopefully, hope will prevail.
Yes.
And I think your hope is a different kind of hope. Like yours is a evidence-based,
Yeah.
Probably like metrics are part of it, and like it's not just like platitudes. Like you want to
Yes.
see results.
That's actually another difference between me and my opponent is I have actual, like, really detailed plans. I write white papers. I can't stop. I love it. And he does kind of speak in bullet points and platitudes, and people are frustrated. And I've had people come directly to me and say, like, thank goodness you actually have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, yeah, evidence-based. I don't care where the idea comes from, right, left, center, upside down. I don't care. If it works, let's try it. Let's look for the things that are already proven to work and start there instead of reinventing the wheel or actually modeling ourselves after. Sometimes it feels like we're modeling ourselves after things that have been proven not to work.
Yeah.
So, and at Amazon, it was like evidence would always win the war.
Mm-hmm.
In big tech in general, you have a good idea, show me the evidence, show me how it's going to benefit the customer, show me how it's going to benefit the business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, there's no argument. There's no more, it's
Yes.
not somebody's opinion or, somebody's ego. It's like, just let's get it done. And that's the approach. I mean, that's so steeped in me. I couldn't lead any other way.
I love it. Well, best of luck to you, Maren, and thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom. This is always fun.
We'll see you next time, hopefully as a sitting member of the Seattle City Council. Wouldn't that be fun? All right. Take care.
Thanks, you too.
Bye, Maren.
Bye-bye.
All right. Maren Costa. It's good to have her back on, and really hope she does win, because like, how can you win your primary, have all of your opponents endorse you, and then not win the general? But check out more about Maren at marenforseattle.org, and then feel free to approval vote her on ofthepeople.us as well. And you can write a review of Maren now on Of the People. I'll show you where to do it. All you do is you go to Of the People, and then actually there's a filter for Seattle City Council. So you see here Maren's profile, and then you can write a review here. So, and then if you want, the guy that we were talking about, the opponent, is Rob Saka, and learn more about him here. So check it out and consider giving an approval vote if you want to, and leaving a review of why you like or dislike a particular candidate. Let me do a couple things. One is I want to thank our channel members. And then two is I think I will do a quick recap of some recent conversations and stuff that I've had on Twitter, and some interesting debates. But let's give a shout out to the people who make this channel possible and keep it running, which is our members, who basically help me with our streaming software costs and our podcast hosting fees. So, by the way, if you're watching this only on YouTube, but you also listen to podcasts, just make sure you subscribe to Nerds for Humanity wherever you listen to podcasts, and we will be there. All right. So, starting at our biggest supporters, we have, let's see here, our VPs, Kristen Slevin and Bike. Thank you, Kristen Slevin and Bike. I think Soldier One's senior VP support has expired. So If anybody wants to up their support for our content, that senior VP spot is currently available. Just click the join link on YouTube. But thank you to our VPs, Kristen Slevin and Bike. And then at the hardcore level, we have Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Kirsch, Mr. History, Mona, Vaughn, Yang, Dean, Galessa, Jay Perrin, Dana, Jason, Daniel, Mickey, Yoda, and Ukiyo. And then at the verified level, which you can join for $1.99 a month, we have Lisa, Brandon, Sophia, Doris, Emerald, Ben, Ira, Elizabeth, Shoni, Dr. William, Karen, Mai, Brittany, Lori, Juana, Kevin, T, Jeremy, David, Nicholas, Mike, Zig, Roberto, and Jackson. All right. So thank you. Oh, I forgot the freaking music, our wrap-up music. I always forget that. There we go. All right. So I promised you that I would. Oh, by the way, we have some comments in the chat. Maria says, as a city councilor in a small city, I appreciate the thoughtful questions. Well, thank you for joining the conversation, Maria. And Vaughn, yes, you did get your shout out. And thank you, Uria, for your service to your city and your community. Okay, so what's going on Twitter lately? Let me go to my profile. By the way, exciting, next week we're gonna have Marianne Williamson on the show. It'll be next Saturday, October 7th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you set your reminders for that one. I'll put a link in the chat too. Let's see. YouTube Godly Content Live, and then go here, view on YouTube. Okay, so let me show you. So I'm so excited that Carlos, Marianne's campaign manager, reached out to me. And he said, hey, would you be up for interviewing Marianne Williamson on the Nerds for Humanity channel? I was like, of course. So definitely check it out and hit your reminders, because that's coming in 5 days from this live stream and maybe even sooner on replay. Okay, so on Twitter, what have I been talking about? I'll show you one thing, which is I did a short video on immigration, which, I wish I had a chance to talk to Maren about it, but I will talk to, I will discuss it with Marianne as well to get her take. So specifically, here is, let me just play it for you. Let me turn off my theme music, my going away music. Play me my theme music. All right. Get me my theme music. Does anybody know where that's from? Let me know in the chat or the comments if you know where that's from. Here is in May of 19. Okay, hold on.
Hello, Nerds for Humanity, time for your daily dose of political data. Today, we're going to talk about immigration. 36% of respondents approve of the job President Biden is doing on immigration. What does the actual immigration data show? It shows that monthly migrant encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border had been consistently going down from 2008 to 2012, and then kind of had stabilized pretty low at around under 50,000 per month in 2016. And then from 2018 to 2019 had risen quite considerably, all the way up to 132,000 in May of 19 before the pandemic, and then hit a new low at the height of the pandemic in early 2020. Coming out of the pandemic, it has reached 224,000 in May of 2022. If you found this data interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye, nerds.
All right. So that was an interesting data pull where if you kind of miss the key things, basically the the number of migrant encounters has increased considerably, but actually was the lowest under Obama and had come down and then rose considerably under Trump. And then now under Biden is even higher. And it is for sure a trend that you got to ask yourself, like, how sustainable is this? And I don't fault the migrants who are escaping poverty and extreme climate and looking for opportunity. Like, frankly, if I were in their situation, like, I think all of us would try and provide for our families and seek a better life. To me, there seems to be like this black and white approach of, well, we're going to stop all immigration, or we're not going to do much on securing the border. And I got to believe that you can be for securing the border and for orderly immigration and asylum consideration with limits and be humane and pro-immigration. Like, those aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but that's just kind of sad that neither side is really trying to find a middle ground on this immigration thing. They're both, I feel like the Republicans are kind of celebrating the crisis and then saying, hey, build a wall and that'll solve all the problems. And then the Democrats are maybe focusing on the inhumane treatment in the previous administration of asylum seekers, but that's not necessarily a solution to be less inhumane. I think we do need comprehensive immigration reform, and that has to be a combination of border security and how we figure out who gets visas and how we repatriate people and how we consider asylum applications and where people are when those are considered and how many asylum seekers we're able to support in any given period of time. So a lot of open questions there. And I will be doing another daily data short. Thank you, Mr. History. Glad you're enjoying it. Thank you for being a member of the channel. Yeah, I'll probably do another one about, since everybody's talking about the budget, I will be doing one. I'll give you guys a sneak peek since we're here. You guys get some bonus content, but I'll turn it into a 60-second short later. So many of you have probably heard both the Democrats and the Republicans say that we should never touch Social Security or Medicare, and we should take that off the table in terms of any cuts to spending. And you'll often hear the Republicans say, and there should be no cuts to defense spending either, that, the cupboards are bare and we don't have enough bullets. And so just if you run the numbers, if you don't make any cuts to defense, Medicare, or Social Security, and you wanted to try and balance the budget in 10 years without raising taxes, you would need to cut Medicaid, child health, Obamacare, like Affordable Care Act, by 70%. You would need to cut food assistance, farm subsidies, military retirement, on anti-poverty programs by 70%. You would need to cut veterans, health, transportation, education, law enforcement, research, and foreign affairs by 70%. So the biggest hypocrisy is this notion, frankly, on the Republican side, when they talk about, well, we need to, eliminate our federal debt and, spend within our means, but we should not touch defense, we should not touch Medicare, and we should not touch Social Security. Well, you're basically saying you're going to cut everything else by 70%. And even then, you will not get to balancing the budget until 10 years from now. So just think about the math there. And basically, the reality is that the Republicans are talking a good game about being more fiscally kind of responsible, but they want their cake and eat it too. They're like, but we won't touch Medicare, defense, Social Security. Well, then what the hell is left? You'll have to cut everything. And on the Democratic side, you cannot say that you will not touch any of these programs and still be responsible either. Like, we currently spend almost $2 trillion, I think, more than we bring in every year. Like, at some point, we won't be able to borrow at such low interest rates from other countries. Not to mention, like, do we want to be dependent on other countries lending us money every year? So thanks for coming, and have a great rest of your weekend. Goodbye, nerds. By the way, if you can't join, can you do me a solid and give this thing a like button and subscribe? But I think most of you are subscribers, so just give us a like and share and comment. What do you want me to ask Marianne Williamson? I read all the comments, so I'll be listening.